Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and it's a very happy Wednesday morning to you and yours, December the 13th to be exact. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. For the last time, as full-time producer, Mr. Drew Hicken is on the other side of the glass. And Drew, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. A little sad that my time on the show is up, but happy to graduate and move on and find some other things to do, hopefully. So we'll see how things go. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun on this show, so kind of sad that it's over.
I wonder how your sleep schedule is going to be now.
My sleep schedule will be just fine. I'll make a rapid improvement, I think. I think it will get much healthier here over the next couple of weeks until I wouldn't be surprised, however, if I got something else that screwed up my sleep schedule in the coming months. So we'll see how things go.
Well, we'll talk more with Drew a little bit here in the show. But first of all, let's talk about you. And thank you for waking up with us here at 6 a.m. on 97.9 ESPN Radio or streaming over your mobile device, the WTSM app, the TuneIn Radio app. They're both great. Of course, ESPNTallahassee.com for your desktop. Podcasts all over the place. iTunes, Podcast Republic, WarChantRadio.com, YouTube, however, whenever. Thanks, and thanks for when you rate and subscribe us. It always helps out the show. We always do appreciate that. Radio@warchant.com is your email. @WakeUpWarChant is your Twitter account. And our friends at For the Table make this possible every day. Madison Social, Central, Township. Those are all in College Town. The Soto Baking Company, they're in Midtown as well. So we've got a packed show for you today. Gene Williams joins us in the next segment. He's going to talk about the War Chant Roundtable that made its way out yesterday. Adrian Crawford is on. Since we're not having shows Thursday and Friday, we decided now would be a good time to take a look back at that game against Tulane, take a look ahead at the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and where Florida State sits as they face their last big test in out-of-conference play in Sunrise this weekend. But before we do all this, we had Michael Langston on the show yesterday, and I'm beginning to think maybe we should just give Michael the hour for the next month because things are rolling fast and furious in recruit land, and my Lord, what a day it was for college football recruiting in the Sunshine State. So let's go ahead and just take this step by step, piece by piece. Michael has his thoughts on the premium recruiting board. I'm not going to share his thoughts with you completely because that's for paying customers. And, of course, if you want that, WarChant30, that's a promo code that gets you 30 free days inside that premium recruiting board to use at checkout. But I will use his timeline because it's very beneficial when you're trying to put all these pieces together. And even since the last time he's updated, there's been some stuff that's come out. So let's just walk through this piece by piece, and we'll start with DeMarcus Adams, who got a visit today from the Florida State Seminoles, or at least yesterday he got a visit. I'm getting all mixed up here. But anyway, he's, of course, a firm commitment to Florida State, just another guy that they're trying to shore up. Then, from there on out, John Huggins did not meet with the FSU staff. That's not exactly the biggest positive sign for the Florida State Seminoles. And another decommit, Jalen Curry, a 2019 wide receiver who just doesn't seem to sit into Florida State's plans. And outside of that, that's pretty much the bad news. Because outside of that, a lot of good stuff starts rolling. Jaden Woodby, 5-star defensive back, according to Rivals. A guy who's compared himself to Jalen Ramsey, says he wants to play like him, has immense talent, immense skill. You tell the story better than I, Drew. Well, walk me through Jaden Woodby's last 24 hours.
So basically this kid has throughout over the course of the last year, and he's retweeted these tweets today, said that he wanted to win the Thorpe Award, and somebody tweeted at him and said, hey, do it in Garnet and Gold. And he tweeted at FSU football and said no, because FSU football was too dumb to ever offer me. And then Amari Gaynor, the bell cow of the class, sees that, tweets back at him and said, it's coming. And then hours later, he tweets out, "Wow, just got an offer from Florida State." Now, it's a little late in the game for Florida State to be jumping in here. This kid he's considered to be an early enrollee. But, when you got a new staff and whatnot, listen, you're going to have to try to shake some things up. This is just the way that it goes. Let's see how much ground Taggart could possibly cover. I don't expect the kid to come to Florida State, but it does bear some weight saying that he did want to be a new and improved version of Jalen Ramsey, and he really looked up to Derwin James. I think Florida State might, again, I don't expect Florida State to land him. He's been a long-time Ohio State commit, but still pretty cool to see the new staff come in here and offer some new kids who the last regime kind of just didn't really see fit.
And I think on top of all that, the fact that Willie, even if it is a long shot, is willing to call his shot against a recruiter like Urban Meyer, and say, you know what? Sure, let's offer this kid. Let's ride, because the worst he can do is say no. He's from California. He's from St. John Bosco High School, as you already said, class of 2018. 6'2", 205. Yeah, those are corner metrics if I've ever heard them. Why not take a shot in the dark? Shoot your shot 2K17. If you're going to do this, there's always been a saying in business that the worst they can say is no. And if this kid's dream is Florida State, you're extremely confident as a recruiter. Kids respond to you. The worst he can say is no. That's literally it here. Florida State has nothing to lose by offering a kid of this talent, especially when this is a place he's always wanted to come to school.
Yeah, you'd rather shoot your shot and see what happens. I mean, you never know. Recruiting is such a funny game. You never know if this kid, clearly he had supposedly been waiting on this offer for quite some time. Again, little late for Florida State to get in the game here about, say, what's today, the 12th, 8 days before the early signing period, him expecting to be an early enrollee and whatnot. Their best chance here is obviously to somehow get him to second guess that decision to enroll at Ohio State early and maybe push this thing to February. Then I would think Florida State maybe's got a shot. But I think that's Florida State's main goal right now out on the trail. When you got a guy like Taggart coming in this late in the game, what you really have to do here is go after kids who you think you might have a possibility of not flipping right away, but getting them to back off signing in December, because the good majority of these kids, especially the ones who have been committed for a really long time, are going to go ahead and sign on December 20th, because why not? They're eager. That's what they want to do. Early enrollees are not. And then the other, 20, 25, whatever percent of kids are going to be the ones that you have to go after December 20th. And if you can get some kids that you want to back off maybe a little bit and wait till February, while also reshoring up those kids that were already committed to you and that for sure you want in the class, I think that's the way you have to go about things if you're Willie Taggart.
And it's been a lot of fun to watch that shift as well, just from a strategy standpoint, just the game of recruiting that it is itself. And you mentioned it, the idea that it's not necessarily about winning a kid over right now. It's about, for some of these guys who have been signed, sealed, and delivered for a while that you have your eye on.
Just get your foot in the door.
Florida State, just the idea of, hey, just wait. I'm not asking you to come here. I'm not asking you to sign on the dotted line right away. I'm just asking you to give me a chance. And that's interesting to see with that new signing period, how it's changed the approach for a lot of new head coaches. Because let's face it, this is not a phenomenon that's exclusive to Willie Taggart right now. Dan Mullen's probably had to do a lot of this. Mario Cristobal probably going to have to do a little bit of this for some of these guys who are maybe leaning towards maybe going with Willie Taggart to Florida State, who are inside that class. There are plenty of new coaches who have to do this and say, listen, I'm not asking you to back out of your commitment. All I'm asking for you right now is to give me a chance and don't shut this down in a week.
And Florida State's done a really good job of that so far. I think Willie Taggart's done about as good as he can on the trail so far. He's even got some guys like Warren Thompson and Malcolm Lamar planning visits to Florida State, I believe, this weekend. I'm not sure if Isaiah Bolden will be joining them as well. Also, a one-time Florida State and Oregon commit. Malcolm Lamar is committed to Oregon, but he's really good friends with Warren Thompson, who many expect to flip to Florida State, who was also committed to Oregon, but grew up a diehard Florida State fan. Now, many of you who follow recruiting know that Florida State has this Armwood curse where they can never get these kids from Armwood. Thompson and Lamar are both Armwood kids, so if Taggart's able to come in here and break that curse right off the bat, good on him.
Build the statue now.
Yeah, build him. Go ahead. Get it going.
And it is something that they've been, it's been a U.S. stronghold for so long. It's been a place where you just can't go in for the life of you. And I get it. One of them grew up a Florida State fan. I completely understand that you're going to play on those heartstrings, but just the fact that this guy's able to come in right away and do that stuff. A little bit of negative news outside of what we already mentioned. Houston Griffith has committed to Notre Dame. He said he was going to give Florida State a chance. Michael Langston, of course, even said this as well. You knew it was over as soon as he decommitted. It wasn't going to be a fit.
Yeah, very, very few times do you see a kid decommit and then go back to that same school. You saw it with Keith Gavin. Outside of that, in recent memory, I can't really think of a lot of kids, at least at Florida State, or really nationally, who decommit. For a long time, for instance, with Justin Fields, a lot of Penn State fans wanted to act like they had a lot of hope there, but he was never going back to Penn State. When a kid decommits and says, hey, they're still at the top of my list and this and that, it's all politics. It's all them just being as nice as they can and kind of softening that blow. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible with a lot of these kids, but yeah, Houston Griffith basically was a Notre Dame kid the second he decommitted from Florida State. This was a long time coming, and by a long time, I mean several weeks, because that's how long it's happened. Notre Dame's been on him the whole time, so this is no surprise. The Jalen Curry thing is no surprise. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Jalen Curry end up at Texas A&M. He's got Grant Cannell, who is his teammate, and he is also committed to A&M, and obviously Curry was more committed to Jimbo than he was Florida State, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Curry end up there as well. I think that's a pretty big blow for Florida State, even though you knew it was coming. Curry is a really talented kid.
Other guys that got some visits, not necessarily in homes, but did get chatted with in person by Willie Taggart today, Anton Green and Jayshon Corbin. Both were able to talk with Coach. And one of my favorites, by the way, the Anton Green photo, I quite adore the photos that Rick Trickett is taking with some of these staffs, with some of these kids, with the other staff members. Because Rick Trickett, it's been funny. If you go through and look at the timeline of these tweets, the evolution of him looking horrifically uncomfortable putting up a chop hand and smiling for the camera. Like every single photo as they go on, the smile gets a little more natural, a little bit more natural. He's a pro by the end of the day. So there it is. Rick Trickett gets comfortable with the new guys and taking pictures. Because let's face it, some of this stuff, you saw some of these pictures every now and then for recruiting visits, but now you have a staff and a head man who certainly gets, you got to be a little bit more savvy with getting your message out there.
Yeah, I do got to say one thing about the recruiting, and I understand why Willie is doing it. However, I would love to make sure with him that he's not planning on keeping Dawsey on as the wide receivers coach, because he's starting to scare me a little bit. He's bringing him on all these recruiting trips, and I totally understand it, because what better way to get your foot in the door than bring a guy who already has a relationship with these kids? He can kind of introduce them, bridge that gap a little bit. But I mean, man, I'm really hoping that Taggart's, that would be a concerning move for me, for him to keep Dawsey on the staff, a guy who's had 2-3 tops wide receivers drafted in the last, God, how many years? And time again, Florida State brings in these high-level, talented guys. I just don't think that would be a good move. I don't expect Taggart to do it. I said yesterday, I have full confidence in Willie Taggart putting a staff together. I would be okay with Dawsey staying on as something else, but just hopefully not as the wide receivers coach.
Well, let's break that down as a couple things. Let's go ahead and pack that out. Let's look at it this way. With Lawrence Dawsey, the idea here is it the chicken or the egg? Were his wide receivers unsuccessful because he couldn't coach them? Or was his wide receivers unsuccessful because they were put in an impossibly complicated scheme to succeed? If I'm Lawrence Dawsey and I'm trying to keep my job at Florida State, that's what I'm trying to put in Willie Taggart's mind. I'm not saying it's true, because I tend to think they should move on from Lawrence Dawsey. I tend to agree with you. But that's the pitch you're making, and also you have to look at it this way, Drew. Gene and I were talking off air before we recorded that interview last night, and we both kind of agreed to ourselves, there's a reason that this assistant coaching process is taking so long, and it's because a lot of these guys on the outside that Willie probably wants are still in bowl games. They're prepping. They're doing what they have to do to get their teams to succeed. They're not going to bolt in the middle of all this. And also, Willie Taggart seems to be a man of his word in that he's going to evaluate the staff. He's going to see what's currently here. He's going to see what he's got, because obviously these guys were able to bring in a ton of talent. Just because it didn't translate into wins last year doesn't mean they can't recruit. This is nothing but an extended audition for Dossie and anybody else who wants to stay on this staff.
The only guy I expect to really stay on this staff is Odell Haggins, as he should. But again, I hear what you're saying. Lawrence Dossie, though, while he has gotten some guys to come to Florida State, is really not that great of a recruiter. He misses on guys time and time again that he shouldn't.
I'm not saying he is, but you said it yourself, just bringing in a familiar face.
Sure. Like I said, if that's what he's doing, bridging the gap, sure, evaluate him all you want. I don't expect Lawrence Dossie to be here next year unless it's in some kind of extremely reduced role. He is a Nole through and through, so maybe that's something he'd be interested in. I surely don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Again, just playing a little bit of devil's advocate, but it's still plenty of time before that bowl game to recruit and evaluate and see what you have. And if he wants to give him a shot, he might give him a prove-it deal. Who knows? When we come back, it's our own Gene Williams chatting a little bit about the biggest questions in Seminole football. Then after that, it's our friend Adrian Crawford. It's all on the other end. It's Wake Up Ward Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Shorty get down, good Lord. Baby got them open all over town. Strictly bitch, you don't play around. Cover much grounds, got game by the pound.
Best happy hour in town going down tonight 4 to 7 with our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, all right there in the heart of College Town. It's 3 different places with 3 absolutely incredible yet different experiences and 1 great deal. So make sure you're headed on out that way. Of course, Florida State football news. There's a lot of interesting things to discuss and talk about, but here's the good news about having a quiet week the way that this week has been. I think it gives you a chance to decompress all that's gone on this year in this absolutely crazy football season that honestly you couldn't have bet half the stuff that happened throughout this football season would have happened at the end of the year. And so, of course, our friends over on the writing side of warchant.com have put themselves together a nice little round table. Irish Fell, Gene Williams, and Corey Clark. And Gene Williams joins us on the phone line right now, of course, the founder and administrator of our beloved warchant.com. Boss man, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well, and speaking of that downtime, nobody appreciates that more than me. It was, it was a fun ride there for a couple weeks with all the crazy coaching stuff, but those especially when we get a little older, man, we need our sleep, and that I didn't get a whole lot there for a couple weeks, and I'm absolutely just relishing the last couple days.
I've been trying to, but my body has conditioned itself to where 5 hours, wake up, go, you have a show to do, you have something to cover, and so I'm still trying to train my body back into sleep, but I completely agree with what you're saying. I know that much.
Well, I know you got a long weekend ahead, Ryan. We're gonna enjoy this, and then really get back at it next week, I think. Practices will pick back up, and basketball team gets back. Obviously, got that big game against Oklahoma State. So I think things will get fast and furious again in a few days.
And of course, Adrian Crawford going to join us after this to talk about that game as well. But let's talk a little bit about this roundtable, shall we? So, for those who don't necessarily always know the premise, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the 3 of you get together, you have this discussion. So I have always wondered this, Gene. When you do these roundtables, do you guys just record these in person, or do you come up with questions and everybody answers them separately? What's the process of these?
We generally answer them separately. I mean, we've been in the past. Sometimes we'll touch base a little bit and talk about them before we do them. But in this instance, just the way it worked. Obviously, Corey is up in Atlanta right now, so really wouldn't have him around. I think Ira and I touched on a couple of them. But usually it's just we answer them separately. We don't want the other people to kind of affect us too. So just we try to do it independently.
That's fair enough. So let's talk about these questions you asked. And the first one I think is a really easy one that's on a lot of people's minds. How good is this Willie Taggart hire? And we talked a lot about how much sense it makes in the days leading up to the actual hiring process. His ties, it's his dream job. He recruits well. It's a different offense than what you're used to, and you want something that's a little bit perkier. But when you sit down and you actually take a look at this hire, it's a good one, but is it a perfect one?
Yeah, and as I pointed out in my part of the round table, I don't know if anybody has had a hire at a college when there's been a head coach vacancy and said it's a perfect 10. I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of searches, and usually it's much less than what you expect. Until John Gruden takes that job that's on the top of everyone's list, I don't think they're ever going to rate it a perfect 10. So, no, nobody on our panel rated it a perfect 10. And I actually rated it the lowest, and I had it at an 8. And not that, obviously that's really high. I think there's still, he's had 1 year of experience, talking about Willie Taggart, at a Power 5 program. And while all the signs are there that he's going to be successful, running a program the size and prestige and the history of Florida State's a whole different animal. So we got to wait and see. And obviously we don't know who his assistants are going to be at this point. So really, obviously that's going to be a huge part of it too. So there's definitely a little bit more unknown with Willie Taggart. But at the end of the day, I don't think there was a better realistic coach you could have got. Obviously he was their number one pick. I was thinking about this. I didn't put it in the roundtable of like, who could they have realistically got that might have been better? The only one, and I don't even know how realistic it would have been, maybe James Franklin. If I had my druthers, maybe I would have taken him because I just think he's got obviously a longer track record of being successful at Power 5 programs. But really, I don't know. He had a huge salary at Penn State, if that was even realistic. But so they got their top pick. The Florida ties, all the recruiting, everything else seems to be there. And if he hires, again, still if he hires a quality assistant staff, I think the sky's the limit for Coach Taggart.
Another one of the questions you asked, Gene, is about Taggart's 3 biggest challenges in year 1, and some of the obvious stuff comes up. Identify who fits where in your schemes, offensively and defensively. Evaluate the staff, save recruiting. It's stuff that we've talked about a lot. But there are a couple interesting ones, especially one that Ira put out that I think is really, really good, in that even if it is a new guy, even if it is a breath of fresh air, whoever the new head coach was at Florida State, sometimes it's just not good enough to be a new face. He's going to have to go out and he's going to have to mend some of these relationships that have been torn between this football program and this booster base and this alumni base, even to an extent, over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, and heck, even some going back years.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Yes, it is definitely an important thing, and it'll be a challenge for Coach Taggart, but it's also what he does well. Dealing with people, it's a huge strength, unlike Jimbo Fisher, who really had to struggle. He could turn on the charm when he really wanted to, but you could tell he didn't want to do it. Coach Taggart just loves to go out and talk to fans and interact. So I think this is going to be very easy for him. And in my conversations with some of the higher ups at the Seminole Boosters, they're absolutely thrilled about Coach Taggart. So I think that they're going to be wide open in terms of starting anew with a new coach. So I do think there will be much better relationship and much better communication, whether that's with the administration, the boosters, and, obviously the fans as well, and the media. I can't forget that. Obviously, Coach Fisher's relationship with the media, especially this season, got strained quite a bit. It was probably never great going from Bowden, who was probably the most open coach in the history of college football, dealing with the media, to one of the most closed dealing with the media. So there was always an adjustment period there. But I think Coach Taggart, it's hard not to like the guy. So I think that's going to resonate with everybody that deals with him. Yeah,
and it's, like you said, the perfect culture fit. And not to keep harping on that, but Florida State needed a guy to an extent when Jimbo Fisher took over that was, I don't want to say the anti-Bobby, but certainly was stronger in certain situations. And now that Florida State's had its 8 years of Jimbo Fisher, and some of that message, as we've talked about before, has grown stale. Some of that message had maybe gotten a little old, and honestly, some people were somewhat done with it. You needed someone who's almost the anti-Jimbo Fisher. It's almost like when it always seems like, for the most part in football, there's that old mindset of thinking, and it doesn't happen as much anymore, but there used to be that old mindset that if you fire a defensive-minded head coach, you have to hire an offensive mind, and vice versa. That used to be that old adage whenever a coach in the NFL would get fired, or whenever somebody in college football would get fired. And now I kind of feel like we've reached that point where organizationally, especially in a big college football program like Florida State, you need a guy that culture-wise, you need a guy that mentality-wise can be a little opposite of the last guy, because their fingerprints are just all over everything in today's college football.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think that's a good one, especially the circumstances here with the way things. Obviously, it doesn't matter when Jimbo Fisher's winning and they won national championship conference titles. It really doesn't matter. You will put up with a guy who maybe isn't culturally perfect or has the best interpersonal skills with the people around, because winning doesn't matter. Money's rolling in for the boosters. It does things for everyone. But when you're not, is when things cycle down quickly. And it's probably, I always do it. It's a little awkward, but I like to make the comparisons. If you have a girlfriend or whatever, if you have a really bad relationship with a girlfriend, what I found is the next one I go to is the opposite of that last one. Sometimes you overreact, but I think that's very true here because it's like a relationship. You're with somebody, you're tied to them, you do everything with them for good or for better or for worse. And in this instance, obviously, things got pretty worse there down at the end. So I think it is. But again, it just worked out. It was complete, it fell in their lap that they were able to get a guy with the ties, a guy that was a Seminole fan, a guy that, has been in the state, and a guy who's an up-and-coming young coach. So I think but you're right, it is almost very different. And I think, but it's a refreshing difference that I think everybody desperately needs here.
With hindsight as a factor, and now I wanted to switch and give a little taste of some of the premium questions on this roundtable that you can get on warchant.com. By the way, you want to see those, Warchant 30 gives you 30 free days access. That's their promo code to get that. One of the things that you mentioned was what are your most memorable moments covering Jimbo Fisher at Florida State? And I know you actually said the Chance Bowl in 2011 wasn't interesting, but outside of covering an actual game or an event, is there a funny or an interesting or something that people maybe wouldn't expect Jimbo Fisher story that you have?
I'll let one out here for our listeners. This was kind of unique, and this was a couple of years ago. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but what the heck. A couple, like a lot of us, with media, and I know Corey mentioned a time when he was able to, after I think it was after a press conference, where he was able to kind of talk to Jimbo off the record. I had several of those opportunities. And first of all, I want to say it is when he was in a good mood and is on a roll, to listen to him talk football was unbelievable. I mean, this guy was a savant. He would know shoe sizes of a guy who was a backup offensive lineman in 1985. I mean, the knowledge base was incredible, this guy. So anyway, one of these, I forget what it was, but he sat me down in his office. We're sitting there shooting the you-know-what, and he's going on and on about stuff, complaining about this and that kind of things. And then just out of the blue, he goes, "What do you think about hair plugs?" I was like, what?
No way.
Because I don't know, do you think people would notice? And I'm like going, what the heck? He's asking. This was before the hair transformation that you saw in Jimbo Fisher. So he threw that out at me beforehand. I didn't give him any advice, but I'm like, I don't know, Coach. I really don't know. So anyway, he did throw out before the little hair transformation. He did throw that out at me off the record.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
I've been holding off that the whole time. I know I could never say that while I was here, but yeah, I decided to let that cat out of the bag.
I'm so happy that of any of the stories you chose, it's that one. I want you to know that.
I figured you'd appreciate that, Ryan.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And, of course, for more great insights, you can find them on the Warchant Roundtable. Yeah, I'm going to wrap that one up real quick. For more great insights, the Warchant Roundtable, it's Ira's thoughts, it's Gene's thoughts, it's Corey's thoughts, all there on the hottest topics in Seminole football. Gene, thanks as always, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, we're taking a break, and then Adrian Crawford's coming back to talk a little bit of college basketball with us. Florida State and Oklahoma State this weekend. It's on the other end. Wake Up Warchant 97.9 ESPN Radio.
All aboard the Taggart train. I'm really excited about FSU football and the Willie Taggart era.
Did you hear there's also a new era happening at warchant.com?
Did Warchant get a new coach?
No, but they did get a star player. Corey Clark is joining the team. Between Gene Williams, Ira Schafel, and Corey, that's nearly 50 years of experience covering the Seminoles.
Glad I finally took advantage of that 30-day free trial offer and subscribed.
And now you get the added bonus of reading Corey Clark's insight into the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
All right, so it's our last show of the week, so we don't have a chance on Friday to preview Florida State, Oklahoma State. So now is the time to do it. And so we welcome in Mr. Adrian Crawford, the senior basketball analyst for warchant.com, who, of course, has done a great job with us all this time. Adrian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm just fine. Let's get into this. So I haven't had a chance to talk with you about Tulane on Sunday, but of course the game down in Tampa, Florida State maybe didn't look completely dominant in that first half, but they still led by double digits. And then they're able to pull away a little bit. So overall, a game where this is an encouraging sign, where you're still not playing your best basketball at times, and you're still beating teams into submission. I think that's a great sign for what Florida State is and what it can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team, again, they're so deep across the board. I think they've got, they're going to go 10, 11, 12 guys on the floor. And the thing that was very interesting to me is that, C.J. Walker doesn't have a great game. Phil Cofer doesn't have a great game. But, again, you have Rodas who steps up. Trent Forrest steps up. I think you have Ike plays a pretty decent game. I mean, across the board, it's just every night you've got 3 or 4 guys who can step up and play. And, again, we're doing this without Chris Kamaji, who, those first 2 games was really outstanding as well. So, I mean, this is just what this team's going to be. They're going to win games by committee. They remind me a lot of the Atlanta Hawks a few years back, where, Atlanta Hawks had 4 All-Stars that year on their, 4 or 5, I can't remember, All-Stars on the team. And this Florida State team just has a lot of really, really good college basketball players. And what's different than that, than the NBA is the NBA, I think you got to have a superstar every night. And I think in college, if you've got really good college basketball players, you can be really, really good college basketball team and have a chance to win a championship.
I'm with you. You need that superstar factor in the NBA. It's been proven throughout the years, of course. You look at Golden State, you look at Cleveland, you look at the Lakers of the late 2000s, early 2010s. They were chock full of stars, and even the Celtics of that time as well. You need that 1 or 2 superstars, or in the era of the super team, even more to take that step to the next level. And you don't always necessarily need that in college ball, at least not to make a deep run. You just need guys who are solid at their position. They know what they're going to do, and they take it to the next level. And with all that being said, Adrian, when you take a look at this Florida State basketball team, it's a lot of guys who seem to know their roles. And one thing that we did not get a chance to discuss the last time we had you on, but if you watch Florida State basketball, it's abundantly clear. This is as close to a junkyard dog defense, old style, Devitus Dokes, Luke Laux, Solomon Allaby, Chris Singleton defense as we've seen at Florida State in a very long time. And there's that old cliche in football that defense travels. And I think it's just as true in college basketball, or in basketball in general, because you used to see it with some of those teams. They would have horrible nights shooting the basketball. They would look really bad sometimes, and they'd take some bad looks at the floor, and they would win some ugly, ugly games on the road, but they'd still win. And I think that's what has a lot of people, especially maybe more casual FSU basketball fans, very excited about this team, is that when you mix the defense that those teams used to have, which this team, I'm not saying they're going to be the number 1 team defensively in the country like some of those teams were, but when you mix some of that tenacity they have on that side of the floor with a little bit more offensive firepower and the ability to run and shoot the way this team can, it's a dangerous proposition.
It is, and with this group, I think, again, what you have that's a little bit different than, say, in the past, or even with that great ACC championship team with Luke and Davidus and Solomon and Chris and those guys, is the fact that this group is able to score the basketball. That group was, they had some guys at moments they could play. One guy got hot, but they weren't scoring a lot of points. I mean, this group scores a lot of points, but it also defends. And I think that's what makes this group so, so dangerous, is because they defend, I think, across the board. I mean, again, and I think you look at a little bit different than last year. I mean, Xavier Rattan-Mays was good, really good on the ball defense. But, we talked about it a lot last year. I mean, Dwayne Bacon just wasn't a very good defender. Jonathan Isaac was a good defender and was a great secondary shot blocker. But what's different this year with this group, I mean, you've got guys you have incredible defenders. I mean, when you out there with C.J. Walker, Trent Forrest, Phil Cofer, and Terrence Mann, and Ike, I mean, you have 5 legit great defenders. Not just like, okay, I mean, you have 5 great college defenders on the floor at one point in time. And so that's what makes this group really, really good. And again, doing it without a Chris Kamaji, Florida State, I think, has the 2 best shot blockers, like tandem, in America, hands down. I think Ike Obiagu is as Coach T.Y. Charlton Young says, I mean, he is the best amateur shot blocker in the country, hands down. Like, I mean, he's the best shot blocker not getting paid money. It's not in the NBA right now. He is incredible defensively.
Looking forward to this Oklahoma State team, Adrian. They don't allow a ton of points a game. They've only allowed 64 points against per game, and that's after a game where they played Wichita State. So they've kept that average pretty low. They are, of course, coming in off a losing streak, like I said, losing that game, but they're pretty good. They match up pretty well with Florida State on the boards. They're averaging 38 rebounds a game to Florida State's 40.8. Points per game is about the only place where you feel Florida State offensively, the firepower shows 87 points a game to 78.8. I mentioned it. They're coming off a rough one against Wichita State where they end up losing 78-66. And they feasted on a lot of pretty, I guess you could say, pedestrian basketball teams. I feel like for Oklahoma State, this is a situation similar to Florida State when they go to Florida. It's a matter of proving it. And when you're a 7-2 basketball team and you're playing the number 19 team in the country, you have a great shot to prove it. Of course, BPI only gives Oklahoma State a 29.3 chance to win this game. However, this is, I would say, the last best test that you're going to have before you head to Cameron Indoor Stadium and open conference play. And that's not to say the other games aren't important, but this is the one that, to me, this is your final tune-up. This is the final one to get ready and maybe get you undefeated through out-of-conference play.
For sure. I think that this is going to be a great test, a great matchup, because this is one of those games where I think Florida State should win. This is one of those games for sure where I think they should win. But again, they have to come in every single night with a Florida State mentality. And again, they've been harping to these players and to the team over and over again, the coaching staff. It's just the Florida State way. The way they defend, attention to detail, defensively, game planning, sticking to that. And it's just getting these guys to stay locked in. I mean, we talked about this last year with that team. It was always, when we were talking last year, is that can they every day, night in, night out, step up to the floor, on the floor and be locked into the game plan? Can they be locked into the game plan? And the thing that helps this group is you've got guys now who've had 1 year of experience. So they're used to guys game planning and scheming, against what they do. And they know what we're going to run. We know what they're going to run. And it's just going to come down to, can we stay locked in? And I think if we do, we're going to come out and have a chance to go into Cameron Indoor, undefeated. And again, I think that's I think that's been the goal of this team all along, is to be undefeated getting into that game against Duke. And I think this team is really locked in. And so I think they'll be fine. I think they'll come out ready to play because, again, just even the other night against Tulane, like you said, we don't play great, but we're still up double digits. And again, that's an amazing thing this year about this ball club.
I find it pretty interesting, Adrian. The past couple times that Florida State's gone down to the BB&T Center down there in Sunrise where the Panthers play, they've played competition that's certainly inferior, but they've struggled. Florida State did not look great in that game against Manhattan last year. Florida State the year before that almost messed around and lost to a not-so-great FAU team. So yeah. I know you've talked about this before, and this might be a little bit of a dumb question, so forgive me if it is. But as someone who's played the game, when you go to a place only once a year, especially a place that's not specifically built for basketball, and I know technically the Tucker Center isn't either, but BB&T is set up to be a hockey arena. It's got different sight lines. It's got weird way that the seats are angled. How can that affect your eyes as a shooter?
It does. It affects you. And again, just, the Civic Center, for example, used to be where, back in the day where
Tiger
they
Sharks.
had hockey. Yeah, you had the Tiger Sharks. And so, man, one of the things about that, because they had, the ice underneath the floor, that they had to keep it kind of, they always had to keep it at a certain temperature. So it was always a little cold in the Civic Center. And so I don't know, again, that was almost 20 plus years ago. So I don't know if they're, how technology has advanced within that to where, but again, sometimes arenas are cold that way. Sidelines are absolutely different when you're playing. And so it was kind of like when I was playing, we struggled always playing in Clemson. Whenever we would go to Little John, we always struggled playing up there. And so I think sometimes it's a psyche thing, but again, this team has got to be one of those teams that grinds it out. And I think the way they have to do it is in games like this where you may be struggling in a place where it's going to be one of those games where you're going to have to grind it out defensively. Like you're going to have to start off from the beginning and just say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get stops early on. We're going to be locked in, be into our game plan. And they can get going early. And that's the thing with this group. This group, when they get going early, it's hard to catch back up with them, because they just throw body upon body upon body. And here's the thing with this group. When the first five comes out, there's not a lot of drop-off from the next group that comes in. So we're not seeing drop off, from that next group. Just like last year, you had the Boom Squad. I mean, they were incredible. And there wasn't like there's just a whole different level that came in. So they've got to stay locked in to their game plan. If they're willing to do that, I think you're going to come out successful. But I'm with you. If we come out to this game and we're kind of just, kind of not locked into the game plan, it could end up being a game where we give up that we shouldn't give up. And again, going into ACC play, those first few games we have to go into this. We can't lose games like this. We can't, these are games Florida State just can't lose.
2 p.m. Saturday on the Fox Sports family of networks, whatever your local RSN is, they might be able to have this game, Florida State and Oklahoma State. Adrian, thanks as always for jumping on with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, ladies and gents, we're going to put a bow on it and say goodbye to our old friend Drew right after this. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. We put a bow on it here, Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio, last show of the week, and last show with Drew Hicken on the other side of the glass. And Drew, I was struggling what I was going to do here, and I thought about putting a clip package together. I thought about doing a best of or one of your best Mets rants or something. But, I figured that I was just going to speak from the heart. And when we went on this, we're talking the Monday after Valentine's Day this year, I had no idea what I was getting into. We'd met once or twice. It was just one of those things where it was a right place, right time for both of us. It was a situation where we rolled in. We needed a producer. We wanted to take the show live. And since then, it has been such a blast, and it has been such a thrill. And I know we talked about it a little bit earlier on Monday. We have been able to do this job during one of the craziest Florida State athletic years that you will ever see. And we've been able to talk about such fun stuff. And we've really gotten to know each other. And I'm so proud of the work that you've done, because I know going to class plus waking up at 5 a.m. to come in and do this show at 6, this isn't easy. And doing that plus being a student plus having a life plus doing all, it's not easy. And you've busted your butt for us for the last year. And I thank you so much for doing it. And I'm so happy to call you a friend, my man.
Hey, I mean, I really appreciate that. And, like you said, it's been a blast, and it's a little sad that it's coming to an end, but, you never know what future endeavors have in store. And I think this has been a really good experience for me, and to see where the show has come from, 10, 11 months ago to now, I think we've both gotten a lot out of it. It's been a really good opportunity. I'm just thankful that, like you said, right place, right time. It's been a really fun time.
It's been an absolute thrill. And I will say this, you are welcome back anytime. You want to get something off your chest? You want to rant about an assistant coach? You want to rant about baseball? There is a sounding board here on Wake Up War Chant as long as I am here, my friend. And I always want you to know that.
Hey, like I said, you never know. I'm sure there will be plenty of things for me to call in and be upset about. So hopefully not too many things next year. Hopefully Florida State football goes a little bit more smoothly, and we don't have these Florida State sports situations that we've never seen before. But we'll see. You never know.
So we mentioned it. We got a couple days off this week. I'm back with the rest of the War Chant crew on Monday. Of course, we've got plenty more from Ira and Gene and Corey and Michael and Adrian, too. There's a lot of Seminole sports and business is about to pick up. And once final week is over, it's going to get a little crazy. So for the last time, for Drew and myself, Golick and Wingos up next, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.